My name is Elias Thorne, and I trade in captured moments. Or at least, I used to. Photojournalism was the dream. Chasing truth through a lens, freezing moments of impact. Then came the incident. One photo, published prematurely, fueled by ambition and bad coffee, captured a private grief it had no right to expose. It shattered a family, and my career detonated alongside it. Now I'm a ghost myself, haunting the city's grimy arteries, taking photos of leaky pipes for slum landlords or capturing the forced smiles at corporate events, forever chasing the ghost of redemption through the viewfinder of a pawnshop camera. The city breeds secrets, especially after midnight. I carry an old handheld radio scanner, a relic from my better days, listening less for breaking news and more for the city's subconscious, the hushed dispatcher codes, the static between calls, the ambient noise of a million sleeping souls. And that's how I first heard it. Not the usual fuzz or cross-channel bleed. This was different. A structured, rhythmic static. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence. Like Morse code translated into noise, insistent, almost deliberate. And beneath it, woven into the fabric of the static itself, was a melody. Faint, discordant, played on something that sounded like a detuned piano or a broken music box, looping endlessly. It felt ancient, deeply unsettling, like a forgotten signal trying to break through from somewhere wrong. At first, I blamed the cheap scanner, the city's aging infrastructure, my own frayed nerves. But the signal persisted night after night, appearing unpredictably across various frequencies. Always the same pattern, the same haunting, broken tune buried in the noise. And it seemed directional. Faint when I was near the gentrified waterfront, but growing stronger, clearer, when my restless late-night walks took me deep into the labyrinthine heart of the old industrial district, a decaying sprawl of abandoned warehouses, forgotten factories, and narrow, lightless alleyways where the city's modern pulse barely reached. One rain-soaked Tuesday, the air thick with the smell of wet asphalt and river-dredged decay, the signal screamed. Louder, sharper than ever, hijacking a completely dead frequency. It wasn't just background noise anymore. It felt like a physical pull, a hook snagged deep in my subconscious, drawing me further into the district's grimy maze. The usual city sounds faded behind me, swallowed by the oppressive damp and the insistent hiss-pop-crackle. Down an alley choked with overflowing dumpsters and slick with unidentifiable grime. Deeper than I'd ever ventured before, the signal reached a fever pitch. It seemed to emanate directly from a section of blank brick wall between a derelict pawn shop, its barred windows like empty sockets, and a boarded-up laundromat weeping rust stains. My skin prickled. There was no door, no obvious source. Just damp brick and the overwhelming sonic presence of the static and its broken melody. Then, as the static pulsed, hiss-pop-crackle, a section of the brick wall seemed to shimmer. Like heat haze, but cold. The mortar lines blurred, the texture shifted, resolving for a fraction of a second into the outline of a doorway, dark and impossibly deep, before solidifying back into brick as the silence fell. My breath caught. Hallucination? Sleep deprivation? Or was the static, the frequency itself, creating the doorway? Waiting for the next pulse. Hiss-pop-crackle. I watched, heart pounding. Again, the shimmer, the transient outline of the door. It was real, an entrance that only existed in time with the signal. Driven by a recklessness born of despair and journalistic curiosity I couldn't suppress, I timed it, waited for the static burst. As the brick shimmered, revealing the fleeting doorway, I lunged forward, pushing through the cold, resistant air where solid wall had been moments before. I stumbled through, not into another alley, but into somewhere else. The transition was jarring, the rhythmic static cutting off abruptly, replaced by a profound, echoing silence and the faint, almost subliminal hum of unseen electricity. I was in a long, narrow room. Stark white walls, eerily clean. Polished concrete floor reflecting harsh, cold track lighting overhead. An art gallery, impossibly tucked away behind a transient, static-induced doorway. No reception desk, no brochures, no other people. Just paintings. A dozen or so, hung with stark precision, minimalist black frames against the white walls. And the silence, it wasn't peaceful. It felt sterile, dead, like the air inside a vacuum-sealed jar. The paintings themselves were masterpieces of unsettling photorealism. Each depicted a scene drenched in profound loneliness and quiet dread. An abandoned playground swing set under a bruised, twilight sky, one swing moving slightly, chains groaning silently on the canvas. An unmade bed in a bare room, window overlooking a desolate, snow-covered field, a single indentation on the pillow, a flickering, off-air television screen in a dark, empty living room, casting dancing static light on unseen furniture. They captured moments after something had happened, the lingering absence, the chilling residue of presence withdrawn. Each canvas seemed to hum with that same low, electrical frequency, buzzing against my teeth. My gaze was drawn inexorably to the largest canvas at the gallery's far end. It was different, not a scene of absence, but of presence. It depicted this very gallery, viewed from the entrance where I now stood. The stark white walls, the concrete floor, the track lighting, rendered with impossible, mirror-like accuracy. But the painted gallery wasn't empty. Standing near the far wall, partially turned away, examining one of the unsettling paintings, was a figure. Tall, thin, dressed in dark clothing. And as I watched, my blood turning to ice, the figure in the painting moved. It turned its head slowly, deliberately, away from the canvas it was studying, angling its painted face until it was looking directly out of the painting, directly at me. Its features were indistinct, blurred by shadow and artistic license, but the intent was unmistakable. It saw me. The silence in the gallery deepened, became watchful, predatory. The painting wasn't just depicting the room. It was part of the room, a window, a trap. And something on the other side was now aware I was here. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the dead, humming silence of the gallery. The figure in the painting watched me, its blurred features somehow conveying an intense, predatory focus. I was trapped in its canvas gaze, pinned like an insect under glass. Every instinct screamed run, but the transient, static-bound doorway I'd entered through was gone, leaving only solid, indifferent brick in the alley outside. Assuming I could even force myself to turn away from the impossible thing observing me. Was it trapped in there? Or was the painting the real space? And I the ephemeral image? The thought sent a fresh wave of vertigo through me. The sterile white room felt suddenly unstable, the laws of physics thin and unreliable. Slowly, deliberately, the figure in the painting raised one indistinct hand. Not in threat, but pointing towards one of the other canvases lining the gallery wall, the one depicting the empty hospital bed, the single wilting flower on the nightstand. My gaze snapped towards it. Had something changed? The painting looked identical, the same meticulous, soul-crushing detail, the same palpable sense of absence. But the feeling emanating from it was different now. The ambient hum, the rhythmic static that pulsed in the air, seemed stronger around this canvas, buzzing faintly against my teeth as I looked at it. And the wilting flower, was it drooping slightly more than before? Its petals seeming darker, drier, as if decaying in real time within the painted world. I tore my eyes away, looking back at the main painting. The figure hadn't moved, its hand still pointing. It was directing me, guiding my attention. Why? Forcing down the paralysis of fear, I took a hesitant step further into the gallery, away from the mocking gaze of the painted figure towards the hospital bed canvas. The closer I got, the stronger the static felt, prickling my skin, raising the hairs on my arms. The faint, broken piano melody seemed clearer here, woven directly into the noise, emanating from the painting itself. I reached out a trembling hand, stopping just short of touching the canvas. The paint looked thick, layered, yet possessed an impossible depth. The scene wasn't just depicted. It felt real, dimensional, like looking through a window into a pocket of unbearable sadness. The wilting flowers seemed to shed a single, painted petal onto the painted nightstand as I watched. My breath hitched. The paintings weren't static images. They were changing, subtly, slowly, but undeniably. My gaze swept across the other canvases. The swing set under the stormy sky. Did the clouds look darker now? Lower, more threatening? The empty street corner. Was the puddle reflecting the streetlight slightly larger, the discarded shoe looking wetter? It was impossible to be certain. The changes too minute, too easily dismissed as tricks of the light or my own fractured perception. Yet, the feeling was undeniable. These weren't just paintings of moments. They felt like the moments themselves, trapped, decaying, subtly shifting within their frames. And the static, it pulsed from each one, a chorus of rhythmic noise and broken melodies, weaving together into the overwhelming, disorienting hum that filled the gallery. Were the paintings generating the signal, or were they receiving it, conduits for that strange frequency that had led me here? My attention returned to the figure in the main painting. It remained motionless, hands still pointing towards the hospital bed, but its form seemed less distinct now, fuzzier around the edges, the shadows composing it deeper, more absolute. Was it fading or withdrawing? Emboldened slightly by its apparent lack of direct aggression, I continued my cautious exploration of the narrow gallery space. The white walls were seamless, featureless, save for the meticulously hung canvases. The concrete floor was bare, polished to a dull sheen. No other furniture, no sculptures, no descriptive plaques, just the paintings and the oppressive, static-filled silence. Then, at the far end of the room, beyond the large painting depicting the alley and its watching figure, I saw it. A door. Not the transient, static-induced one I'd entered through, but a solid, physical door, painted the same stark white as the walls, almost perfectly camouflaged. It had no handle, no hinges visible, just a thin, dark seam outlining its shape. Was this an exit? A way out of this impossible space? Or did it lead deeper into the mystery? As I approached, the overall hum of the static seemed to concentrate, focusing around this hidden door. The broken piano melody became clearer, louder, emanating directly from the white surface. It wasn't just a loop. It felt like a warning, a discordant keep-out sign rendered in sound. Hesitantly, I reached out and pressed my palm flat against the cool white surface. The static surged, vibrating through my hand, up my arm, making my vision momentarily blur. The door remained solid, unyielding. No hidden latches, no pressure plates. How did it open? My eye scanned the surface. Near the bottom, almost invisible against the white paint, was a small, dark marking. Not a symbol, not a keyhole. It looked like a smudge, like someone had touched the door with a dirty finger. Kneeling down, I looked closer. It wasn't dirt. It was ash, or perhaps powdered graphite. My mind flashed back to my apartment, the late nights, the scanner, the rhythmic static. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence. The pattern. Was it a code? A key? My heart began to pound again, this time with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. The static wasn't just a signal, it was an interface. And this gallery, it wasn't just displaying moments, it was processing them. The realization hit me with the force of an electric shock. The static wasn't just emanating from the gallery. It was the gallery, or at least its operating system. The rhythmic pattern, the hiss-pop-crackle, silence, wasn't random noise. It was a key, a command, waiting for input. And the smudge near the bottom of the seamless white door, graphite, maybe conductive, felt like the designated point of interaction. My mind raced. How to replicate the pattern? I couldn't generate static, but maybe physical contact, timed correctly, could work. Like tapping out a code. Heart pounding, I knelt before the door again. Waited, listening to the ambient hum, trying to discern the precise rhythm of the underlying static pattern. Hiss-pop-crackle. Pause. Hiss-pop-crackle. Pause. It was roughly a 3-beat burst followed by a silence of equal length. Taking a deep breath, focusing intently, I placed my index finger on the dark smudge. Waited for the internal hum to reach the silent phase. Then, mimicking the pattern, I tapped 3 times quickly against the door. Tap, 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 corresponding to the hiss-pop-crackle. Then lifted my finger during the silent beat. Repeated it. Tap, tap, tap. Lift, tap, tap, tap. Lift. For several cycles, nothing happened. The discordant piano melody continued its broken loop. The static hummed indifferently. Was I wrong? Was it just a smudge? Then, on the 4th repetition, as my finger completed the 3rd tap, the door responded. Not with a click or a groan, but with a silent, almost imperceptible shift. A vertical line of shadow appeared, dividing the white surface perfectly down the middle. The 2 halves of the door began to slide smoothly, silently, outwards from the center, retracting into the walls on either side. No exit lay beyond. It wasn't a way out, but a way in, deeper in. The space revealed was small, perhaps only 10 feet square, but utterly unlike the sterile gallery. The walls weren't white, but a deep, non-reflective black, seeming to absorb the light from the gallery behind me. The air inside felt heavy, cold, and carried a strong smell of ozone and something else. Warm metal? In the center of the black room stood a single object, a complex apparatus resembling an old, large-format plate camera crossed with a bizarre scientific instrument. It stood on a heavy metal tripod, its lens, large, dark, multifaceted like an insect's eye, aimed back towards the gallery, towards the paintings. Gleaming brass and copper wires snaked from the device, disappearing into conduits in the black walls. A low, electrical hum emanated from it, the source, perhaps, of the gallery's ambient noise. Was this the projector? The recorder? The source of the static images on the canvases? As I took a hesitant step inside the black room, the sliding doors behind me began to close, smoothly, silently sealing me in. Panic flared, but before I could react, the room changed. The electrical hum intensified, the air crackled, and the multifaceted lens of the strange camera-like device began to glow with a faint, internal light, projecting something onto the black wall opposite the entrance. Not a single image, but multiple images, flickering, overlapping, shifting, distorted, black and white versions of the very paintings hanging in the gallery outside. The swing set, the hospital bed, the street corner, the alleyway where the painted figure watched, all displayed simultaneously, like a chaotic, multi-panel security feed monitoring scenes of desolation. And they were moving, not just subtle shifts now, but clear, undeniable motion. On the projected image of the swing set, The swing moved back and forth violently, as if pushed by an unseen, angry hand. In the hospital bed scene, the sheets writhed, bunching and smoothing as if an invisible occupant tossed and turned restlessly. On the street corner, shadows darted across the rain-slicked pavement. And in the alleyway scene, the figure I'd seen watching me was gone, vanished, leaving the painted alley empty once more. My blood ran cold. The paintings weren't just changing, they were live feeds, capturing moments of ongoing despair, loneliness, absence, broadcast onto the gallery walls from where? When? And this device, was it merely projecting? Or was it capturing these moments itself, somehow tuning into frequencies of sorrow? Then, one of the flickering panels changed dramatically. The desolate snow-covered field outside the unmade bed's window dissolved, replaced by a new scene, my own apartment. My threadbare sofa, my cluttered coffee table, the view of the damp alley outside my window, rendered in the same stark, black and white photorealism. And sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, was me. An image of myself from weeks ago, trapped in one of those whiskey-fueled spirals of despair. The device wasn't just capturing random scenes, it was capturing my moments of desolation too. Had it been watching me all along? Was that how the figure in the alley painting knew me? Was I destined to become another canvas in this static gallery, my lowest moments trapped and displayed for eternity? The humming intensified, the air buzzing, the projected images flickering faster, threatening to overwhelm my senses, pulling me into their captured despair. Seeing myself projected on that black wall, trapped in a monochrome loop of my own past misery, shattered the last vestiges of detachment. This wasn't just observation anymore, it was violation. The gallery, the device, whatever entity lurked behind it, hadn't just lured me in. It had known me, watched me, harvested my despair like it harvested those other desolate moments. The air in the black room felt suddenly colder, the electrical hum turning into an accusatory buzz directed solely at me. As I stared, paralyzed by horror and a surge of helpless anger, the projection of my apartment flickered, shifted focus. The image zoomed in unervingly close on my projected self's face, head buried in hands, shoulders shaking. The discordant piano melody intensified, weaving itself around the image, amplifying the sense of hopelessness. It felt like the machine was mocking me, replaying my lowest point, feeding on the remembered pain. "Stop it," I whispered, though I didn't know what I was speaking to. The machine? The room? The unseen artist of this misery? The projection didn't stop, but it changed. The image of my past self dissolved, replaced by a live feed, stark white walls, polished concrete floor, harsh track lighting. The gallery outside, but viewed from a different angle, higher up, as if from a hidden camera near the ceiling. And the paintings, they weren't static. The painted swing moved faster, violently. The sheets on the hospital bed writhed as if in agony. The shadows on the street corner swirled and coalesced. And the large painting of the alleyway, the figure was back, standing in the painted doorway, head tilted, looking directly at the hidden camera, directly at the feed being projected onto the wall in front of me. It knew it was being watched, knew I was watching. Then, horrifyingly, the figure in the projected alleyway painting began to move towards the camera's viewpoint, towards the wall I was staring at, its indistinct features seeming to sharpen slightly, resolving into a predatory grin composed of pure shadow. I stumbled back, heart hammering, ripping my gaze away from the projections, turned towards the strange camera-like device dominating the center of the room. Its multifaceted lens pulsed faintly with that sickly yellow light, the low hum intensifying. Wires snaked from its base into the black, seamless walls. Was this the collector? The projector? The prison? My eyes traced the wires, searching for a control panel, a switch, anything. They disappeared into conduits, offering no obvious interface. But mounted on the side of the device itself, almost hidden, was a small, dark glass screen, like an old oscilloscope display. It was active. A complex waveform scrolled across it, jagged peaks and troughs corresponding to the intense hum filling the room. The visual representation of the abyssal frequency, perhaps? Below the screen were several unlabeled dials and switches, their purpose obscure. Dare I touch them? Could I shut it off? Or would fiddling with the controls unleash something worse? Destabilize the already fractured reality of this place. As I hesitated, the projected images on the wall flickered violently again. The live feed of the gallery vanished, replaced by a rapid-fire montage of new scenes, flashing by too quickly to comprehend. Desolate landscapes, empty rooms bathed in unnatural light, faces contorted in silent screams, geometric patterns shifting and collapsing. It felt like the machine was processing, searching, focusing. Then, it settled on one image, holding it steady. It wasn't a painting from the gallery. It was a stark, black and white photograph, old and slightly damaged, projected onto the wall. A group photo, stern-faced men and women in old-fashioned clothing, perhaps early 20th century, standing stiffly before a large, imposing building, a hospital, an asylum, and in the front row, holding a formal pose, face pale and intense even in monochrome, was Dr. Alistair Finch. Younger, but unmistakably him. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize, severe-looking, holding a strange, rod-like device. And slightly behind Finch, almost lost in shadow, was another figure, partially obscured. Tall, gaunt, dressed in a dark suit. My blood ran cold. It looked unervingly like the gaunt man from Blackwood Manor. Before I could process the impossible connection, the image vanished, replaced by the swirling static pattern that mimicked the signal itself. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence, projected large on the wall, pulsing in time with the sound filling the room. It felt like the machine was rebooting, or perhaps communicating, waiting for input again, waiting for the correct sequence. The seamless white doors slid open behind me, revealing the silent, waiting gallery once more. An invitation to leave the control room? Or a test? The projected static pulsed on the black wall. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence, a visual echo of the sound that still hummed oppressively in the small room. The open doors behind me offered a silent invitation back into the sterile white gallery, where the paintings hung, subtly shifting, waiting, and the image burned into my mind. Finch, the severe woman, and the gaunt figure who looked chillingly like the spectral caretaker from Blackwood Manor. Two impossible places, linked by shared faces in a decades-old photograph displayed by a machine that fed on despair. My reality felt thin, tearing at the seams. Was this machine Finch's creation? A device designed to capture or perhaps even generate these moments of profound absence, fueled by the abyssal frequency he researched? And the gallery, was it a containment unit? A display case for captured sorrows? The figure in the alley painting, was it a guardian? Another captured echo? Or the artist itself? The static pattern on the wall pulsed again, insistent. Input. It wanted something. The same sequence I'd used to open the door? Or something else? My eyes darted to the complex device in the center of the room, to the unlabeled dials and switches beneath the waveform screen. Touching them felt like playing Russian roulette with the laws of physics. Behind me, in the gallery, something changed. A faint scraping sound, like canvas dragging against the wall. I spun around, peering through the open doorway. One of the paintings, The empty street corner with the discarded child's shoe was askew, tilted slightly, as if hastily rehung. And the painting itself, the rain-slicked street looked darker, the single street lamp casting longer, more distorted shadows. The puddle reflecting the light seemed deeper, blacker. And the shoe, it looked smaller, more distant within the frame, as if it had subtly shifted position. The machine was interacting with the paintings, changing them, updating them, driven by a surge of desperate resolve. What did I have left to lose? I turned back to the device, ignored the tempting, terrifying dials, focused on the dark smudge on the now closed sliding doors, the point of interaction. If the static pattern opened the door, maybe a different input could do something else. Close it. Change the projection? Shut the damn thing off. What input, though? My gaze fell on the scrolling waveform on the device's small screen. The visual signature of the frequency itself. Jagged, chaotic, complex. Not just a simple hiss-pop-crackle. There were layers, subharmonics, intricate variations within the thrumming drone. Could I replicate that? Not just the rhythm, but the texture? My finger hovered over the dark smudge again. This was insane. But staying here, waiting for the painted figure to crawl out of the canvas or for the machine to project my own final moments onto the wall, felt infinitely worse. Closing my eyes, I tried to internalize the complex hum filling the room, translating the jagged waveform on the screen into a haptic pattern. It wasn't just tap, tap, tap. It was more like tap, scrape, tap. Pause, tap, scrape, tap. A combination of pressure and movement. Taking another ragged breath, I placed my finger on the smudge, waited for the silent beat. Then, mimicking the complex waveform as best I could, I performed the sequence. A light tap, a short downward scrape, a final hard tap. Tap, scrape, tap. Lifted my finger during the silence. Repeated. Tap, scrape, tap. Lift, tap, scrape, tap. Lift. The machine reacted instantly. The projected static pattern on the wall vanished, replaced by a single, blinding flash of white light. The humming drone spiked, becoming a high-pitched, ear-splitting whine. The multifaceted lens glowed intensely. I threw my arm up, shielding my eyes. The whine reached an unbearable crescendo, then abruptly cut out. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Even the low electrical hum was gone. The painful pressure in my head vanished. Slowly, cautiously, I lowered my arm. The black room was dark now, the projections gone. The only light came from the open doorway behind me, spilling in from the gallery. The strange camera-like device stood inert, its lens dark, the waveform screen blank. Had I shut it off? Broken it? A profound sense of relief washed over me, so intense it almost brought me to my knees. It was over. The noise, the pressure, the haunting images gone. Stepping back out through the open doorway into the gallery felt like surfacing from deep water. The air here felt lighter, the silence less oppressive. The paintings still hung on the walls, scenes of desolation, but the faint hum emanating from them was gone. They felt flat now, just paint on canvas. Still creepy, but inert. Even the large painting of the alleyway seemed neutralized. The painted figure was gone, the alley just an empty, rain-slicked space. Had I done it? Had I somehow deactivated the core of this place? Then I heard it. Not static, not humming, not whispering. A soft, melodic chime, clear as a bell, coming from the direction of the front entrance, the alleyway outside, followed by another, and another, getting closer, like tiny bells approaching in the night. It was the most beautiful, yet the most terrifying sound I had heard since stepping into this impossible place. Something new was coming. The silence in the gallery was profound, a stark absence where the oppressive hum and static had been. It should have been a relief, but the sudden quiet felt unnatural, fragile, like thin ice stretched over an unknown depth. The paintings hung inert, just images now, their captured sorrow muted, their strange energy dissipated. Had I truly neutralized the machine? Broken the connection? Then the chimes began again, closer this time, echoing softly in the narrow alleyway just outside the entrance. Ting-ting-tulling. Clear, melodic, impossibly pure notes, like tiny silver bells shaken by an unseen hand. It was a beautiful sound, achingly so, a stark contrast to the discordant piano and harsh static that had defined this space. Yet, interwoven with the beauty was an undeniable thread of wrongness, a chilling resonance that plucked at nerves already frayed by the impossible. Nothing beautiful belonged here. My breath hitched. I remained frozen near the now dark doorway to the black room, straining to hear, my gaze fixed on the main entrance, the space where the shimmering, static-bound portal had first appeared. Was this what emerged when the machine fell silent? Was this the gallery's true guardian? Or something else entirely? Drawn by the cessation of the frequency, the chimes grew louder, clearer, right outside the threshold now, accompanied by a faint, rhythmic rustling, like silk brushing against stone. Whatever it was small, delicate. Not the lumbering dread of the clicking creatures, nor the cold calculation of the masked keepers. This felt different, insidious. Slowly, hesitantly, something drifted into view through the open doorway. Not walking, but floating, hovering inches above the polished concrete floor. It was difficult to make out clearly at first, partially obscured by the alley's gloom, but it seemed to be a cluster of objects, small, intricate, metallic shapes, linked together by fine silver chains, rotating slowly, catching the harsh gallery light, like an elaborate, antique mobile or wind chime, crafted from polished silver and dark, smoky quartz crystals. And suspended beneath the largest central crystal, dangling like a morbid pendulum, was a single black and white photograph, identical in style and apparent age to the one of Finch I'd seen projected. This one depicted a child, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, sitting stiffly on an ornate chair, holding a featureless porcelain doll, their eyes wide and unervingly dark in the faded image. The entire crystalline structure drifted silently further into the gallery, rotating slowly, the melodic chimes emanating directly from the vibrating quartz. The faint rustling sound came from dozens of thin, black silk ribbons tied to the silver chains, trailing languidly in the air. It was beautiful, hypnotic, and utterly terrifying. It paused in the center of the gallery, directly beneath the track lighting, rotating slowly, casting complex, shifting patterns of light and shadow on the stark white walls. The chimes softened slightly, becoming a low, resonant hum, almost like a purr. It felt like it was observing me, assessing the room, assessing me. Where had it come from? Was it connected to Finch? To the machine? To the paintings? Was this the artist? Or perhaps the collection itself, given a strange, mobile form? As it rotated, the photograph dangling beneath occasionally caught the light just right. The child in the photo, their expression wasn't just solemn. It held a profound, chilling emptiness, the dark eyes seeming to follow me as the structure turned. Then, the crystals began to glow faintly, pulsing with a soft, internal white light, synchronized with the low hum. The air around the floating structure grew colder, and the paintings on the walls responded. Subtly at first, then more noticeably, the images on the canvases began to shift again. Not the subtle decay or live-feed motion from before, but something different. Colors seemed to bleed slightly at the edges. Perspectives warped almost imperceptibly. The swing set looked slightly more rusted. The flower by the hospital bed seemed completely absent now, replaced by a dark stain on the nightstand. The discarded shoe on the street corner looked partially submerged in the puddle, as if sinking. The floating crystalline structure wasn't just observing. It was interacting with the paintings, subtly altering them, perhaps curating them, refining the captured moments of despair. Its rotation stopped, the dangling photograph of the empty-eyed child facing me directly. The white light pulsing within the crystals intensified. The low hum resonated deeper, vibrating through the concrete floor. And the static, the rhythmic hiss-pop-crackle, returned. Not loud and oppressive like before, but faint, insidious, whispering directly from the floating structure, overlaying its melodic chime. It hadn't been deactivated. It had merely been transferred, changed hands. The gallery wasn't dead. It had just found a new, quieter, perhaps even more dangerous curator. And its cold, crystalline gaze was now fixed entirely on me. The crystalline structure hovered silently, its melodic chime now overlaid with that faint, returning static, hiss-pop-crackle silence. The child's photograph, dangling beneath the largest quartz shard, faced me directly, its dark, empty eyes seeming to bore into my soul. The white light pulsing within the crystals intensified, casting sharp, cold highlights on the gallery's stark walls and illuminating me like a specimen under a microscope. I felt scanned, analyzed, not just observed, but evaluated. The entity wasn't merely a passive curator. It felt like an active intelligence, assessing the room, assessing the neutralized machine in the black chamber behind me, and assessing me, the anomaly, the intruder who had dared to disrupt its domain. My instinct was still to flee, but the seamless white door leading back to the now inert machine room offered no escape, and the memory of the transient, static-bound entrance I'd used felt impossibly distant, perhaps permanently closed now that the primary signal was altered. I was trapped here, under the cold, crystalline gaze of this new presence. Slowly, deliberately, the structure began to drift closer. Not fast, but with a silent, inexorable glide that tightened the knot of fear in my stomach. The chiming grew slightly louder, the static more insistent, seeming to vibrate directly within my skull again, though less overwhelmingly than the machine's full-bore assault. As it moved, the black silk ribbons trailing from it brushed against the polished concrete floor, leaving faint, dark smudges, like trails of ash or graphite, the same substance I'd found near the hidden door's interaction point. It stopped perhaps 5 feet away from me, hovering, pulsing. The photograph of the child swayed gently, its empty eyes seeming to hold a universe of cold indifference. Then, the painting nearest to me, the one depicting the lone swing set under the stormy sky, changed. Not subtly this time. The image on the canvas rippled violently, like disturbed water. The stormy sky darkened to an almost black intensity, lit by flashes of painted lightning. And the single moving swing began to arc higher, faster, swinging with frantic, impossible energy, its chains straining against unseen anchor points. It felt less like a depiction of absence and more like a captured moment of pure, unrestrained panic. My gaze snapped back to the crystalline entity. Its light pulsed brighter in sync with the flashes of lightning on the canvas. Was it causing this? Reacting to my fear? Or demonstrating its power? The entity drifted slightly sideways, aligning itself between me and the next painting, the empty street corner. Observe. The voice wasn't spoken. It formed directly in my mind, cold, clear, genderless, laced with the faint chime of the crystals. Hesitantly, I looked at the street corner canvas. It too began to shift. The flickering street lamp pulsed erratically, The puddle reflecting its light seemed to deepen, darken, swirling like black ink. And from the depths of the painted puddle, something seemed to be emerging. Vague shapes, indistinct, like grasping hands made of shadow and reflected light, reaching up towards the discarded child's shoe. Moments decay. The mental voice chimed. Absence becomes presence. The static preserves, refines. It was refining the despair, concentrating it, perhaps even manifesting the source of the original dread within the captured moment. This wasn't just a gallery. It was an engine for processing sorrow, and this crystalline entity was its new operator. Its attention shifted back to me. The photograph of the child swung forward slightly, as if presenting itself for inspection. You, Carrie echoes. Thorne. It knew my name. Fragments, discordant. You disrupt. The collection. The light within the crystals flared again, harsh white light pinning me in place. The humming intensified, becoming painful, burrowing into my ears. Requires curation. The entity began to glide towards me again, no longer observational, but purposeful. The silk ribbons rustled, the chimes turning sharp, dissonant. It wasn't just going to observe me or analyze me. It was going to collect me, add my own captured moment, my own despair, to its static gallery. Requires curation. The mental voice, laced with cold chimes and insidious static, resonated in my skull as the crystalline entity glided closer. Its pulsing white light bleached the color from the already stark gallery, casting my own terrified shadow long and distorted against the wall behind me. The dangling photograph of the empty-eyed child swung gently, a pendulum counting down my final moments. There was nowhere to run. The entrance portal was gone. The machine room door sealed me in from behind, and this hovering collection of quartz and captured sorrow advanced with chilling, deliberate slowness. Panic surged, raw and primal. I scrambled backwards, pressing myself against the seamless white door to the machine room. My hands scrabbled uselessly against the smooth surface. Trapped. The entity stopped a few feet away, rotating slowly, its facets catching the harsh light. The chimes softened slightly, becoming almost inquisitive. Echoes strong within you. It whispered in my mind. Loss, regret, failure, potent resonance. It wasn't just my fear it sensed. It was the accumulated weight of my past failures, the ghosts I carried. That was the input it craved, the raw material for its collection. Its light pulsed brighter, focusing on me. I felt a strange pulling sensation, not physical, but psychic, as if threads of energy were extending from the crystals, probing, trying to latch onto my thoughts, my memories. Fragmented images flashed behind my eyes. The ruined face of the person whose life my photo destroyed, Sarah leaving, the eviction notices, the lonely nights, amplified, distorted, imbued with the gallery's cold despair. It was trying to harvest my sorrow directly. Get away from me, I yelled, throwing my hands up defensively, even though I knew it was useless. The entity didn't react to my shout, but the paintings along the walls did. As my own fear and remembered grief spiked, the canvases rippled again. The swing set swung wildly, crashing against its frame. The hospital bed sheets writhed furiously. The shadows in the street corner puddle deepened, swirling into a vortex. And in the large alleyway painting, the indistinct figure reappeared, clearer now, its shadowed face turned towards me, mirroring the entity's cold focus. The gallery was feeding on my emotional state, amplifying it, reflecting it back at me. Desperate, cornered, my gaze darted towards the inert machine visible through the open doorway behind me. If that device controlled the gallery, maybe Maybe reactivating it could disrupt this crystalline curator? It was a mad gamble. The machine itself felt dangerous, hungry, but it felt like the only potential weapon, the only unknown variable left. Gathering every ounce of remaining will, I ignored the psychic pull of the entity, ignored the writhing canvases. I turned, fumbled for the dark smudge on the inside of the machine room door, and rapidly tapped out the 3-beat static sequence. Tap, tap, tap. Lift, tap, tap, tap. Lift. The seamless white door slid open silently behind me. The crystalline entity paused its advance, rotating slightly, its focus momentarily shifting towards the reactivated doorway, towards the dark chamber beyond. Had I surprised it? I didn't wait to find out. Scrambling backwards into the black room, I slammed my hand against the inner smudge, repeating the sequence, praying the door would close before the entity followed. It slid shut just as the entity reached the threshold, sealing me back inside the machine's chamber. Darkness. Silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low hum started, almost imperceptible at first, growing steadily louder. The multifaceted lens of the strange device began to glow again, but not with the sickly yellow light from before. This was different. A deep, resonant blue light pulsed within it, casting cool, geometric patterns on the black walls. The screen below the lens flickered to life, displaying not a chaotic waveform, but complex, slowly rotating fractal patterns. What had I done? Had I rebooted it? Or accessed a different function? Then, the humming shifted, deepened, resolving into a low, complex chord that vibrated through my very being. It wasn't the sanity-shredding drone from before. This felt structured, ancient, almost musical, in a deeply alien way. And the air, it no longer crackled with ozone and decay. It smelled faintly of salt and deep, cold water, like the bottom of the ocean. Before I could comprehend the change, the lens pulsed brightly, projecting a new image onto the wall. Not black and white despair, but swirling, deep blue and black currents, filled with faint, bioluminescent shapes drifting in an unseen abyss. It felt like looking through a porthole into the crushing depths of the midnight zone. And the voice, it returned, echoing not just in the room, but seemingly from the projected abyss itself. Not the chiming whisper of the crystals, nor the fragmented static voices. This was ancient, vast, slow as continental drift, yet possessed of an undeniable, overwhelming intelligence. Interloper detected. Sequence overridden. Calibration initiated. My blood ran cold. Interloper? Sequence overridden? Calibration? This wasn't Finch's machine. Or at least, not just Finch's machine. I hadn't shut it off or rebooted it. I had accessed something far older, far deeper. Something that had been sleeping beneath the static, waiting, and I had just woken it up. Interloper detected. Sequence overridden. Calibration initiated. The voice wasn't just in the room. It was everywhere, a subsonic pressure resonating deep within the black metal walls, within the concrete floor, within my own chest cavity. It was impossibly ancient, devoid of emotion, the sound of geological time given voice. Calibration? Overridden? What sequence had I interrupted? The deep blue abyss projected on the wall shifted, the bioluminescent shapes swirling faster, coalescing. The image resolved, becoming sharper, clearer. It wasn't the bottom of the ocean. It was space, an impossible vista of swirling nebulae, distant galaxies rendered in stark blues and blacks, pinpricks of cold, white light like scattered diamonds. But it wasn't our space. The constellations were alien. The galactic structures defied known physics. And drifting slowly through this impossible star field were the bioluminescent shapes, vast, Cthulhu-esque entities, trailing tentacles of pure light, their forms hinting at geometries that made my brain ache. The ancient voice resonated again. Resonance signature. Anomalous. Surface contaminant. Finch echo detected. Initiating diagnostic. Finch echo? Was his consciousness, his memory, somehow imprinted on this machine, like the sorrowful echoes in the paintings? The blue light pulsing from the multifaceted lens intensified, focusing into a tight beam aimed directly at me. It didn't burn, it felt cold, intrusive, like icy needles probing my mind, sifting through my thoughts, my memories, my fears. The sensation was violating, stripping me bare. Fragmented images, not my own this time, flashed across the projected star field. Finch, frantically working on the device, looking gaunt, terrified. The severe woman from the photograph, arguing with him, pointing at equations. The gaunt figure from Blackwood Manor, standing silently beside the machine, watching. The clicking creatures, skittering through conduits. A chaotic burst of static, then the image of the crystalline entity forming, coalescing from captured noise. This machine wasn't just capturing moments. It was recording the entire history of Observation Point 7, perhaps even creating some of its entities. Finch hadn't built a simple frequency generator. He'd tapped into, or perhaps accidentally created, a gateway to this abyssal space, and tied it to a machine designed to process. What? Reality itself? Diagnostic complete, the voice intoned. Subject designation: Carter, Benjamin. Resonance profile: unstable hybrid. Finch echo contamination detected. Static entity signature detected. Recommendation: integration for stabilization and data extraction. Integration. The word sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Become part of the equation. Stabilized. Extracted. Just like Finch's assistant, Miller. Just like, perhaps, Finch himself. The blue light beam intensified. The swirling abyss on the wall seemed to rush towards me, threatening to engulf me. The humming rose, vibrating the very air, making it hard to breathe. The light filaments within the pillar's cavity began to extend again, faster this time, weaving towards me like luminous serpents. No, not like this. I wouldn't be consumed. My eyes darted around the black room, the sealed doorway back to the gallery, the inert device, now pulsing with terrifying blue energy, the conduits disappearing into the walls. There had to be another way. My gaze fell upon the small, dark screen below the lens, still displaying the rotating fractal patterns. Below it, the unlabeled dials and switches. The machine was active, processing, preparing for integration. Could I disrupt it again? Not with the static sequence, but perhaps physically? It was suicide, probably. Interfering with a machine capable of generating abyssal frequencies and projecting alien starscapes felt like poking a sleeping god. But the alternative was absorption, obliteration. Just as the blue light filaments were about to touch my skin, I lunged forward, ignored the intense psychic pressure, the deafening hum, grabbed one of the unlabeled dials, heavy, cold brass, and twisted it violently, randomly, counterclockwise as hard as I could. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. The moment I twisted the dial, the machine screamed. Not an audible sound, but a psychic shriek that pierced my mind, throwing me violently back against the wall. The deep blue light pulsing from the lens erupted, flooding the small black room with an unbearable, incandescent brilliance. The fractal patterns on the screen dissolved into pure, chaotic noise. The ancient, resonant voice from the abyss roared, no longer calm or calculating, but filled with static-laced fury. Calibration interrupted. System integrity compromised. Unstable resonance detected. The entire chamber shuddered violently, as if caught in a localized earthquake. Cracks spiderwebbed across the seamless black walls, emitting faint pulses of the same sickly yellow light I'd seen earlier. The smell of ozone intensified, burning my lungs, mixed with the sharp, acrid scent of overloaded circuitry and something else, something organic and burning. The projected image of the alien starscape on the wall flickered, distorted, then collapsed inward, replaced by a swirling vortex of pure, chaotic energy. Whites, blues, yellows, reds, bleeding together, tearing apart. It looked like the raw, untamed frequency itself, unleashed, unstable. The light filaments that had been reaching for me snapped back into the pillar's cavity as if startled, then began writhing erratically within the swirling energy, their controlled patterns dissolving into chaos. Through the still open doorway behind me, I could hear alarms, loud, discordant claxons, blaring from within the gallery space, a sound utterly incongruous with its previous sterile silence. The paintings. What was happening out there? Risking a glance back, I saw the gallery bathed in the flashing red emergency lights that had suddenly activated. The paintings on the walls were no longer just subtly shifting, they were convulsing. The canvases writhed as if alive, the photorealistic scenes dissolving, melting, reforming into grotesque, abstract nightmares. The swing set twisted into mangled metal, the hospital bed bled black fluid. The street corner warped into impossible angles, the figures within them. The watcher in the alley, the unseen occupant of the bed, seemed to be screaming, tearing their way out of the two-dimensional plane. The collection wasn't just being disrupted, it was breaking down, unleashing its captured despair in raw, chaotic forms. And the crystalline entity, it was still there, hovering near the entrance, but it looked damaged, fractured. Cracks marred its quartz facets, the internal white light flickering erratically like a dying bulb. The melodic chime was gone, replaced by sharp, discordant bursts of static. It seemed weakened, overwhelmed by the machine's uncontrolled energy surge. System failing. Its mental voice was fragmented, laced with static. Containment breached. Echoes unbound. It turned its fractured gaze towards me, the dangling child's photograph swinging wildly. Youthful, the equation, unbalanced, cannot regulate. Before it could say more, the pillar in the black room pulsed violently again. The swirling energy vortex projected on the wall surged outwards, spilling off the wall, flowing into the room like incandescent plasma. It washed over the inert machine, causing sparks to erupt from its casing, then flowed towards the open doorway, towards the gallery, towards me. Warning, core resonance cascade imminent. Reality anchors offline. Integration protocol aborted. Evacuate. The ancient voice boomed, glitching, distorting, before cutting out entirely. Core resonance cascade. Reality anchors offline. Evacuate. There was nowhere to evacuate. The swirling energy, raw, unstable frequency made manifest, filled the black room, licking at the walls, the ceiling, flowing inexorably towards the gallery door. It wasn't just light. It felt physical, immensely powerful, radiating waves of heat and pure, untamed sonic force that threatened to tear me apart atom by atom. This wasn't integration. This was annihilation. The incandescent plasma, raw frequency bleeding into reality, surged through the doorway, washing over me in a wave of searing heat and deafening, multi-layered sound. It wasn't just blue anymore, but a chaotic, roiling miasma of impossible colors, shot through with black static that felt like tiny, sharp needles against my skin. The black walls of the machine room seemed to dissolve behind it, replaced by glimpses of the alien starscape, now distorted, tearing, collapsing in on itself. Instinctively, I threw myself sideways, out of the direct path of the energy flow, scrambling deeper into the gallery. The plasma hit the opposite wall, not splashing, but merging with it, the stark white surface blistering, warping, flowing like hot wax, revealing glimpses of the raw, dark brick of the alleyway behind it before reforming, scarred, and discolored. The boundaries of this impossible space were breaking down. The crystalline entity shrieked again, a sound like shattering glass and pure static as the energy wave washed around it. It recoiled violently, its fractured facets cracking further, the internal light flickering like a dying star. The black silk ribbons trailing from it ignited, burning away instantly into ash. The dangling photograph of the child curled, blackened, and disintegrated. The entity itself seemed to shrink, condense, pulling its structure inwards as if trying to shield itself from the raw, untamed frequency unleashed by the machine it had, perhaps, once controlled. Imbalance. Cascade. Unmaking. Its fragmented mental voice echoed, filled with static and terror, before cutting out entirely. The paintings lining the walls were in utter chaos now. The writhing canvases tore free from their frames, falling to the floor or adhering themselves to the warping walls like grotesque, living blisters. The captured moments within them boiled over. Spectral figures clawed their way out of the melting paint, shrieks of captured sorrow merging with the machine's dying roar. Shadows detached themselves from the street corner scene and flowed across the floor like pools of animate ink. The gallery was consuming itself, its collected despair unleashed, turning inwards. My gaze locked onto the main entrance, the space where the static portal had first appeared. It remained stubbornly solid brick, offering no escape. But the alleyway painting, the large canvas at the far end, it too was warping, melting, the depicted alleyway seeming to stretch, deepen, the perspective shifting impossibly. The figure within it was gone, consumed by the chaos, but the painted space itself felt thin, less stable than the surrounding walls. Was it possible? Could the paintings, the captured moments themselves, become temporary doorways as the gallery's reality fractured? It was insane, but everything here was insane. Dodging a spectral hand reaching from the melting hospital bed painting, I scrambled across the buckling concrete floor towards the far end of the gallery, towards the convulsing canvas depicting the alleyway. The air here felt different, tasting faintly of rain and exhaust fumes. The real alleyway outside? The crystalline entity, now a pathetic, flickering shard of its former self, drifted aimlessly near the center of the room, seemingly oblivious, lost in the chaotic energy storm. The machine room behind me was now fully engulfed in the swirling, multicolored plasma vortex, the structure itself seeming to dissolve into pure, destructive frequency. The entire gallery was groaning, shuddering, threatening to collapse into whatever abyss the machine had tapped into. Reaching the alleyway painting, I hesitated. The canvas writhed, the painted bricks seeming to flow and reshape themselves. Touching it felt like plunging my hand into certain annihilation, but staying here guaranteed it. Closing my eyes, taking one last, desperate breath that tasted of ozone and burning sorrow, I lunged forward, throwing myself at the painting, praying it was a way out and not just another layer of the trap. Hitting the canvas wasn't like hitting paint or fabric. It yielded, not tearing, but dissolving around me, swallowing me whole in a rush of freezing cold, roaring static, and the overwhelming smell of wet paint and ozone. For a disorienting moment, I was inside the painted alley, the world rendered in stark, flashing monochrome, the graffiti writhing on the walls, the puddle reflecting a fractured, screaming sky. It felt like being pulled through a corrupted digital file, reality glitching, tearing, reforming. Then, with a final, violent lurch that felt like being physically expelled, I landed hard on unforgivingly real, rain-slicked cobblestones. The transition slammed the breath from my lungs. Gasping, I rolled over, spitting out grime that tasted sickeningly of alleyway filth and something else, something metallic and sharp, like licking a battery. Silence. Not the charged, humming silence of the gallery, but the mundane, damp quiet of the city night, punctuated by the distant drone of traffic and the rhythmic dripping of water from a rusted fire escape above. I looked up. Grimy brick walls, overflowing dumpsters weeping refuse, the faint, flickering neon glow from the bar at the alley's end. It was the alley, the real alley, scrambling to my feet. Ignoring the throbbing pain in my shoulder where I'd landed, I spun around, staring at the spot where the transient gallery door had appeared. Just solid, damp brick. No shimmer, no static, no hint of the impossible space I'd just escaped. It was gone, as if it had never existed. Had I imagined it all? A stress-induced hallucination fueled by whiskey, insomnia, and too many late nights chasing shadows? No, my clothes were damp, not just from the rain, but with something colder, something that carried the faint scent of ozone and paint. My hand throbbed where I twisted the dial, and nestled deep in my jacket pocket, inexplicably, was a single, smooth, dark quartz crystal, humming with a barely perceptible vibration and emanating a faint, melodic chime when held close to my ear. A fragment of the curator entity? A souvenir? Or a tracking device? I stumbled out of the alley, back onto the rain-washed main street. The city felt alien, hyper-real after the sterile white confines and projected abysses of the gallery. Streetlights cast halos in the drizzle. A lone car splashed past. It felt normal, painfully, blessedly normal. But was it truly over? The machine, Finch's engine, had cascaded, torn itself apart. The gallery, its collection of captured sorrows, had seemingly collapsed along with it. The crystalline curator was fractured, perhaps destroyed, perhaps merely discorporated. Yet, the questions remained, colder and sharper than the night air. What was the equation? What was Finch truly trying to achieve? Who were the gaunt man from Blackwood and the severe woman in the photograph? What was the ultimate source of the abyssal frequency, the deep thrumming beneath reality? And the static signal, as I fumbled for my old scanner, switching it on out of sheer, ingrained habit, I heard it. Faint, almost lost in the city's ambient noise, but undeniably there. Hiss-pop-crackle, silence. Weaker, different somehow, but still present. Still broadcasting. Still listening. Still waiting. I hadn't destroyed the source. I'd merely smashed the receiver, broken the display. The signal persisted, and the echo I carried, the resonance that had marked me as an anomaly, felt like a cold spot in my soul, a permanent alteration. I started walking, pulling my collar up against the rain, the quartz crystal heavy in my pocket, the faint static whispering from the scanner. I had escaped the gallery, but I hadn't escaped the frequency. I was back in my world, but forever changed, attuned to the static, aware of the abysses lurking just beneath the surface of reality, hidden behind shimmering doorways and forgotten alleys. I was no longer just chasing the ghosts of my past. I was now haunted by the echoes of something far stranger, far more terrifying. And the chilling certainty settled over me that somewhere, somehow, the collection was still ongoing. And it knew my name.